Hi, it's Promoter 101. Before we start the normal episode, we wanted to take a moment at the top to acknowledge what is without question the biggest tragedy in the industry to date. What happened in Las Vegas was beyond horrible. It's floored the industry and the world.
We're shocked. We're saddened. 59 people are dead. Nearly 500 are injured. It's an incredible loss of life. And we're recording this podcast on a Friday night. It's 5 days later. We're talking about it. And I'm still left without words about this. This is not just the largest event in our business. It is the deadliest mass shooting in American history. And of course, it happened during the Route 91 Harvest Festival in Las Vegas this past weekend.
Children, families, loved ones, no reason. It makes no sense. It's just pointless because when you come together for music and to be entertained, you shouldn't have to worry about these things. We want to go ahead and leave it there and dedicate this episode to our fallen friends and take a moment of silence.
All right. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Yeah. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Yeah. Promoter 101.
This is Eric Dimmenstein from Ground Control Touring. I'm on Promoter 101.
Welcome to Promoter 101. I'm Dan Steinberg and joined, as always, with my friend Luke Pierce.
It's great to be back here this week, Dan. And we're recording this again at the end of a very heavy week. A lot of things going on in the world. Hopefully, Dan and I can be an hour of levity for everybody out there listening today. We're joined on Promoter 101 by Voice Media's CEO, Mr. Scott Tobias. The head of the company that owns Denver's Westward is here to talk about his company's pivot to digital in a shrinking publishing world. We've also got the Agency for the Performing Arts. That's APA's agent, Mr. Bruce Solar, taking us through his history in the business. We're going to have some stories from the road, from Bus Driver to the Stars, Mr. Les Ingram. Cheryl Bunce is going to play 3 questions. And of course, news of the week.
Hey, this is Rob Zaffarelli.
Patty Ann Tarleton.
Paul Lord. Phil Rodriguez.
Rick Greenstein.
Donatas Nachayos.
Rob Hellett.
Rich Mills. Sasha Bombaji.
Seth Hurwitz. Steve Martin.
Whitney Bond.
This is Trip Brown.
Wayne Forte.
Steve Zapp.
Trevor Solomon.
Live on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
We love you all so much, and that's why it's such a joy and thrill when Promoter 101 gets to come to your city and we get to meet you in person.
Boston, the wait is over. It's this week. Dan and I are going to be there on Thursday. That's this Thursday night, October 12th at 8 p.m. We've got the goods. We've been talking about this for a while, but we're going to be joined by Paradigm's Todd Walker. Bowie presents Josh Body. We've got 3 questions live with Roxanne Dan Millen and a live recording of Promoter 101 at the Berklee College of Music's Popular Institute. Excited to announce a couple weeks ago that we're also going to be joined by record executive turned artist manager from Fenway Recordings, Mr. Mark Cates. That's the guy behind Mission of Burma and MGMT. Here's the details. It's this Thursday night. It's going to be at the Red Room at Cafe 939 on 939 Boylston Street. Doors will open at 7:30, and our sessions are going to start at 8 o'clock. It's free to all. Get there early. It's going to be first come, first serve. Boston, we'll see you this Thursday night at Berklee College of Music's Popular Institute.
And in case you have a question for us, show up ready to ask that question on a mic because we're definitely going to open it up for the panel, or me or Luke, ask any of us. And then afterwards, we're going to do a little schmooze. You can meet everyone. They'll all hang out for a little while. We'll do a little drinking. We'll get to know you all, Boston, because we can't wait to get down with the Boston on Berklee campus this Thursday night. Luke, we're coming to Nashville. It's on deck. Monday, October 16, 11:30 a.m., it's AIBA for our 1-year anniversary show.
Yeah, Dan, we're going to be joined by Live Nation's co-president of North American Concerts, Mr. Bob Rue. It's a Legends Ballroom at the Omni Hotel in downtown Nashville. The conference, I believe, is close to selling out. If it hasn't already by the time you're listening to this, make sure you try to register at IEBA, that's IEBA.org. We invite you to send your questions for Bob Rue in advance. We're going to pick the best ones to read on air, so even if you aren't in the room, email us your questions. Hit us at steiny@promoter101.net.
Same thing if you got a question for any of our friends in Boston that you're not going to be there, you want us to ask them a question, hit us up at steiny@promoter101.net. We will make sure to ask Josh Body the tough questions about what it's like to work at Bowery Presents.
Keep up with us on Twitter. Steiny is at The Jew. The show's at Promoters101. That's promoters, plural. And I'm at W. Luke Pierce.
We want to hear from you. So email me or Luke at steiny@promoter101.net. Tell us whatever you're thinking, whatever's in your mind. If you got a question or you just want to run something by us, we're here to help.
And please help spread the word by telling your friends, tell your family, and drop us a review if you got some time. It seriously helps us out.
If you've missed any of the past podcasts, you can always catch up at promoter101.net. This week we feature a reissue of episode 12 featuring AEG Presents CEO Jay Massiano. This is a seriously fun interview. He is so amazing. He doesn't turn anything down. He answers every question straightforward and clean. I will double your money back if you don't like this interview. And if you haven't heard it, it's new to you.
And Dan is not kidding when he talks about that being an amazing episode, an amazing interview. Bob Lefsetz himself commented the best that you'd ever done, Dan. You got to check it out. That's episode 12 of Promoter 101 featuring Jay Massiano.
It's high praise coming from Lefsetz. Just saying, that guy knows his shit.
Bob Rupp here on Promoter 101.
It's time for the news of the week. Dan, I hate to pile on the sad news, but I think everyone in the world was seriously feeling it on Monday. Of course, everyone reeling in the wake of Vegas, but very sad news coming out of Los Angeles. The world is a lot lighter as rocker Tom Petty died on Monday after being rushed to an LA hospital. Petty suffered cardiac arrest in the early hours in his Malibu home, and he was taken to UCLA Medical, where he could not be revived. Tom Petty, rocker, dead at the age of 66.
Luke, I got to point out the amazing last couple of months that he had on the road. If you're going to finish on a high note, I don't know that anyone could have had a career-ending last couple of months as Tom had. Hollywood Bowl sold out for 3 nights a couple weeks ago, sold out baseball stadiums all over the country. They were firing on all cylinders, doing the best business, doing the music that he loved, and delivering it for his fans. If I'm going to go out, I want to go out on top of my game, and I think Tom Petty did. And I think that's just a tribute to what an amazing person and career he had.
Some other news. The Ticketmaster Songkick saga continues today. A few hours ago, and we're recording this on Friday night, our buddy Dave Brooks at Billboard reported that Zishan Zadi and Stephen Mead are out at Ticketmaster. For those of you who don't know what's going on here, this is something we've talked about on previous podcasts. Obviously, the ongoing legal battle between Songkick and Goliath and Ticketmaster. Zishan was the senior VP and GM of On Tour Fan Club Ticketing, and Mead was a director of client relations and artist services at Ticketmaster, but formerly was employed by CrowdSurge, which is one half of the merged company that is Songkick today. Mead and Zishan were both named in Songkick's ongoing lawsuit with Ticketmaster, and earlier this year, in February, Songkick filed an amended complaint that alleged that Mead used old logins, passwords, and insider info about CrowdSurge to view and share confidential info with his new boss at Ticketmaster. Dan, this is the plot thickening to me. You have to remember that Songkick and Ticketmaster go to trial next month. It's sometime in November. It's like 5 weeks from now. And this is the crazy part. This just reeks to me that here's our scapegoat. If I'm Zishan, I'm probably shitting my pants a little bit here. The other shoe is about to drop. They're about to go to trial. They've released him in a very unceremonious way, and say what you want about everything else going on in the world. This is a pretty good week to dump news like this. There's a lot of other things going on. So why not let this out? 5 weeks later shows up and Zishan and Mead are all of a sudden going to be the scapegoats in this trial. That's how I think this is going to play out.
You know, we invited Matt Jones to come on the podcast from Songkick and talk to us about this after we talked about Songkick last time. And he respectfully passed, at least until they get through some of these bumpy waters. And I got to tell you, I'm interested in what's going on. I want to be respectful to all the guys that are playing this out, because this is some stressful times between bankruptcies, people's jobs are on the line, serious lawsuits between powerful companies. And I'm really curious on how this all plays out. And I haven't really seen anybody blink yet. And the closer you get to a courtroom, the more people get scared. And we're counting the days now. So more weird things as stress levels go up, because as somebody has to take the stand and get sworn in, shit gets real.
Yeah, it is for sure. And think about it. Now you've got, the head of your artist services division that was in direct competition with Songkick and CrowdSurge's product out there, who's allegedly had encouraged Mead to use some of this insider information to gain a competitive advantage on it. Like, this just seems like Ticketmaster's just teeing Zishan up for a not very fun November.
Like I said, I'm curious to see how it plays out. You can never know. It's like going to Vegas and betting your company's future on black when you have to go in the court. You hope the law plays out for you. You hope your lawyers know what they're doing. It's a very scary thing, because it's really out of your hands, and this is a very expensive risk that both companies are playing with right now. So really curious to see how it plays out. The fact that Songkick's got some financial issues, the upside for Ticketmaster is limited. It could be, it's very... If Ticketmaster loses to Songkick here, the whole watch of how this is going to swift financially, I'm really, really curious, but there's some serious play here. I mean, Ticketmaster will live to fight another day no matter what happens. They're a monster company. But Songkick's pretty much all in on this hand, I would think, Luke.
No, they clearly are. This is the last shot of access, and these investors are recouping any amount of money from this is in a inside the ballpark level probability of a home run in this court case that we're going through in November, and the beginnings of it are unfolding today. Let's stay tuned and see what happens.
All right, let's talk about hookah once again. I'm surprised that we're still talking about it, but Polestar's reporting that it sounds like they may have dissolved as CEO Evan Harris has exited the company. Big things on the move there. We're seeing shows being reported by other promotion firms, apparently, that hookah originally bought. Obviously, the whole Pemberton thing. I don't want to drudge this all up again, but it sounds like this is finally coming to a closing chapter, Luke.
I think so too. I think there's a chance that this story might have been overplayed too. I'm hearing conflicting reports as reported in Polestar that some people close to hookah are saying that the reports of dissolution are greatly over exaggerated. But, obviously we know it's been confirmed that hookah had some massive layoffs in May following Pemberton has kind of been, reducing their schedule down to a couple public shows that are on sale right now. And that we haven't heard anything from hookah. Their social media hasn't been updated since May.
I'm hearing words that Dave Fortune and Dan Merker are both gone too, is what I'm hearing from the social circle. I haven't confirmed that with either of them, but that's what I'm hearing from people that are very reliable. So those are big names.
Yeah, that's interesting. This has been a story, again, that's been playing out over the course of the last 6 months. I think we've got to be nearing the end of hookah's in its present form, its present presentation for this. This is just, the end of one long tragic year for these guys.
Yeah, we'll do some research too. We'll check in with both those guys and find out what their status is. I'm sure announcements are coming from both of them very soon. Anyway, never want to see an independent promoter fall. And hookah doing a lot of business. It's sad to see that come to an end because they were doing a lot of good things and created a cool festival. So to hate to see that go, clearly not the best moment for them.
Dan, I hate to close out the news with another sad piece of information, but Friday afternoon, comic Ralphie May had died after complications with pneumonia. He was 45. Ralphie truly was a gentle soul, an incredible guy, an amazing comic with more than 2 decades of history. He will be missed. Our thoughts are with his family, his kids, and all of his friends tonight.
I've known Ralphie for a long time, and I got to say, he's one of the most decent people I have ever met. He would go out of his way to make anyone feel comfortable. He was a giving person, and I feel like not only has the industry lost a legend, I've lost a friend, and the comedy world will mourn a great loss as he's gone too early. Hard to go right into Badass of the Week after that.
There is some happy news because as we talk about this tonight, Chicago Cubs winning over the Washington Nationals right now in the bottom of the 9th inning.
Chicago's got a baseball team. They're on a roll. Awesome.
Yes, we do.
Speaking of awesome, some good news. Let's talk about it. Want to take a moment to shine a spotlight on William Morris Endeavor's Henry Glasscock, a.k.a. the Crystal Pistol. He's one of the hardest working men on the planet and an amazing guy, making him this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. Congratulations, Henry. Mr. Crystal Pistol, well deserved.
Hello, this is Sarah Mertz, Julia Frank,
Zariel Hyatt,
Ali Spagnola,
LX, Marsha Flessick,
Andrea Johnson, and we're on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Appearing live on Promoter 101.
In our feature interview this week, we're joined by Voice Media's CEO, Scott Tobias, who's teaching us how in the face of shrinking print, his company pivoted to a bigger digital platform.
Promoter 101, we are in Denver, Colorado at the Westward newspaper headquarters, joined with Scott Tobias, the CEO of the big whole ship, man. Thank you so much for being here.
It's good to be here. It's good to see you.
Our career paths have just crossed ways forever. I mean, like, you were my rep when I was doing shows out of my bedroom at my parents' house when I was still in high school.
I used to get checks from you in your bedroom at your dad's house. I'll never forget it.
And you couldn't email over ads. You would physically pick them up.
I drove over there every week and got your proofs and got the check when you'd pay me, but I did get your check.
When I pay you. Listen to you. Simply you jest, sir.
I do.
But a long relationship with Westward, but you and me both started here, and, you know, Denver was where we cut our teeth. And
yeah, I mean, to look back is crazy. I think I started at Westward as a rep in a cube with a phone book, if you can believe it, in 1993. That was before the stadium went in, before Coors Field went in. And, back then I remember that, if you found a lead, if you were in Littleton or up north, you'd have to scramble to get back to put the lead into we called it the blue book. It was a huge dot matrix printout of all the leads, and you had to beat your mate back to the office to get it timestamped. So I don't need to tell you the speed of business at this point, but thinking back that far is crazy. And obviously, clearly back then it was
because if you're the first one to claim that client, they're yours.
That's right. Back then, yes. I mean, you could challenge it through the protocols of management, but back then, yeah, you claim the lead, it's your lead. And back then, it was print. It was print and radio, right? So obviously today's a different world.
I'm a big believer in print. I'm a big advocate of it. And we moved away from it in a big time recently. And we joked that print is dead. And I don't know that I really realized how little effect it actually had. Now, I will say that we've moved a lot of those dollars back to the same papers, online resources, and finding that that's a better punch for us. But I still find that there's the best punch we can possibly get is to have the print ad with the online space, because people like having that in their hand and they like seeing the ad. And there's something excited about seeing whether it's a Scorpions Megadeth Breaker ad that's a full page, or just looking at the Herman Hideaway strip that's in your paper. It's the scene is inside that paper. It lives and breathes through the Westward in Denver.
I think that's right. And I do think it's market to market. I mean, I think that strength of publication and penetration matters. Denver certainly is the Model A. I mean, the penetration is really deep. Obviously, we've got the marijuana business. So that marijuana business coupled with the strong promoter business, it's a must-have. And again, I mean, digital is a huge part of our business, clearly, but the print product resonates. And again, in some of the top markets, I don't think you can really buy around it. I absolutely agree with you. You're buying digital with it.
Now, let's talk about, you brought up the marijuana business, and I'm not sure that everyone's seen the Westward that doesn't live in Colorado. So let's talk about what you guys have created there. It's basically in the middle of the paper each week, there is a weed pullout, essentially, like the weed superstore. Every store has their ad.
Yeah, I don't know how many pages it is today. We could go count them, but I think it is in the back. It's right behind Backbeat.
But it's thicker than most other weeklies are now.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty significant.
Just that part of the paper.
Yeah. And, Denver is a hotbed of kind of that. The music market here, and you can ask any of the boys that you know in the market. I mean, it's a C that performs like a high B. I mean, it's a very interesting market situated where we are. The culture, the marijuana vibe. I mean, just the amount of tickets that are sold in this market is unbelievable.
Go back to that for 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
It's a C that performs like how you're talking about a C market that performs like a B market.
I am.
But Denver's a top 20 market.
Well, from a concert perspective, though, you wouldn't put Denver up. I don't think most people would realize or think just how much music is happening every single night.
Actually, the secret's out about Denver. People would consider this dollar for dollar one of the top 3 concert markets in the world.
There's no doubt.
I mean, London, Toronto, Denver, it's like maybe put San Francisco in that mix, but with Red Rocks like as the star jewel and the number of shows that happen in this market now and the number of venues that are rocking, it's hard to, that secret's out of the bag.
You're in the business and I'm in the business.
But the industry knows.
The industry. But I don't think the common kid still who's moving here from the East Coast, okay, or relocating here, they have no idea.
The common kid that lives in Nashville doesn't know that they don't sell hot chicken everywhere else outside of Nashville yet. That's
totally.
Just...
we're in agreement, but I'm telling you, the common man or kid gets here and I think is like, holy shit, I hit the jackpot, right? I mean, from a pure music
nobody skips Denver.
Yeah,
nobody skips Denver.
Yep,
it just doesn't make sense.
It's a great market.
And it's also the only viable market in the middle of the country. And I'm going to get emails about that. I can feel it right away. Kansas City is a real market. Salt Lake can perform now. Albuquerque sometimes performs. There are some markets in the middle of the country, and certainly Des Moines is a real market. But this, between Las Vegas and Chicago, this is the strongest market.
There's no doubt.
So your print business is healthier than anybody else's for the most part because the marijuana law passed and you guys were able to market to that in print.
It's 20 to 25% of the business. That's a big piece of it. But again, I think it's the entrenchment in the market of the product here. It's the long relationships we've had with the big advertisers. It's right product, right town, right time to a large degree. I mean, but again, our print product does incredibly well in Miami. It does incredibly well in Dallas. It does really well in Phoenix. So
let's talk about that. Denver. You guys don't just own the Westward. You guys own a bunch of markets.
Yeah. So I think at our peak, we owned 16 print properties. And I believe today we've kind of realigned the business and we now have, I think it's 6 or 7 print, but we have 16 markets in total, 10 of which are digital only. So for instance, in Las Vegas, we have a digital shop only where we're selling SEO and social media management, website development, programmatic advertising to all.
I don't know that you'd ever need to be in print in that market, but everybody gets there and wants to look up on Google what's happening. So yeah, digital is going to be where you'd want to be.
It's a different business for us. And as you know, we used to be in Seattle. We sold that paper, and now we're back with a full-fledged digital shop in Seattle. So we're quickly going to Salt Lake. We're going to San Diego. And again, I think for the model for us is to really keep and grow these really entrenched full-scale properties that include print. But our mission really is to kind of expand that agency digital services model because it's a very good model for us. And again, truth be told, we absolutely use that customer base to start that business. I mean, without the former print business and all of those customers, we wouldn't be where we are digitally, and we have grown significantly. So in a lot of cases, and this is important, I think, to remember, in a lot of cases, we were the first, and you and I are a great example of that. I mean, we sold you your first print ad. Had you stayed in the market, we'd have sold you your first email ad, your first mobile ad, your first banner ad. And so now we've moved forward, and now we're usually the first person to talk to these mom and pops or mid-sized businesses about digital agency services. So SEO, is your site ranking? Do you know, is it coming up for the right keyword? So it's been a very great run for us. And again, if you don't change, you die. So I mean, kind of that's where we are.
Ironically, it's the first contract I ever signed in my life was with Westward.
I love that.
I hadn't taken an apartment yet. I was still a senior in high school. I hadn't bought a car. The first contract I signed was a 52-week contract. And I remember you telling me if I got to 48 weeks, it'd be okay. Like you'd let me have a couple weeks off if I didn't have anything to run at Christmas.
What's really funny about that is that in my office where we just were, actually, I think I've kept my original run sheets. And I used to write them in handwritten, like who your customer was, the size of the ad, and the amount. And I think that I have a couple manifests that is like you and maybe 3 other advertisers that are on my list going all the way back to 93 or 94. It's pretty funny.
Oh, that's really cool. I remember stressing signing that contract, like, man, I have to do certain number of shows to pay for that ad.
Yeah, exactly. And it was the Ozatlan, and it was a couple other.
I don't even think it was the Ozatlan yet. It was like the Mercury was like my thing, and it was like, how many $5 tickets do you have to sell to pay for this like 6th or 8th of a page that I have to run minimum every week? And it was just like it turned out to be that we were running full pages or double trucks by the end of that, but. That's where it all started. Can we talk about Seattle for a second? You're no longer in that market on print. You had sold the paper that you had owned.
That's right.
And the competing paper just recently announced that they're not printing every week. They're going to print every other week now.
Yep.
As a competitor and you're not in the market on the print side, that's not a sign of strong things for print in general, right? I mean, they're the cool paper in the market.
Yeah, listen, no, it's not a sign of strength for sure.
And I'm not asking you to talk shit about a competitor.
No, listen, I'm very fond of Tim, and I think Tim's a great operator. I think he's really smart. This is not about Tim. I think you're asking me a question about print in general. I mean, clearly.
No, I think it's a sign of the time, not a sign that Seattle's a weak market, because it's actually technically a bigger market than Denver.
That's back to our point, right? In terms of how markets perform, and some are, and again, apples and apples. Seattle does have weed. I mean, you would think
we've got weed.
You would think that the Stranger would be in similar company, to us.
Yes, but the way that Denver is taken to it, or Colorado versus Washington, the laws are different, and it's been a much mellower handle by the government of the rules, and it's a little bit more conservative in Washington than it is in Colorado.
I think it's a good point. Legislation matters. The way that they roll it out in the markets matters. Zoning matters. How are they zoning the grows? What are the advertising laws? I mean, there's no doubt that...
I mean, all these cities are learning by doing, too.
Yeah, no doubt. And there's no doubt that Colorado, I think, has the most business-friendly, growth-friendly setup at this point, from what we've seen. So, going back to your question, I mean, is going bi-weekly a sign of strength? Definitely not. But I'm sure Tim has a good plan. I've not seen what the rate structure starts to look like. I don't know if he's printing more papers. I don't know what the value prop will be for his advertisers.
Well, the content will probably be twice as good. They got twice as long to put it together.
You would hope so. We have looked at that model, as we've divested some properties and decided to stay or go, and we never thought it was a tenable model for us. So, I wish Tim nothing but the best, but it'll be interesting to see what happens to the ad base. Do some of those dollars go elsewhere? Do they start to think about digital agency services, which I think they should? We've talked to Tim about that before. I also know he has his ticketing company, so that might be part of what his mixture is. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know that the ticket company's been completely successful. I think that we've seen a lot of the clubs go back to the ticket flies of the world and the tickets.com. It just...
Yeah, I don't know.
It wasn't as foolproof as everybody thought. I see it less and less.
Yeah, and I don't know.
We don't use it.
I haven't talked to Tim in a while. So.
But we have exclusive ticketing deals with the bigger companies, and we can't play around with that stuff. Let's talk about the data. Let's talk about the online. Let's talk about the things that always put my mouth on the floor when you have the opportunity to enlighten me on the bigger picture.
Yeah. So, again, for us, this transition into a digital services company has been pretty amazing. I mean, as I said, we really started with the ad base that we had, which was, largely restaurants and smaller retail and obviously promoters and club owners. And, now for us, this business has completely broken down those old verticals. I mean, we have customers who spend $499 on a local SEO product, which is a map product. So if you have a club or a restaurant, or a retail shop or a small business, you want to make sure that people can find you. And that's a $400, $499 per month product. We also have huge auto conglomerates and major medical and hospitals and, that are spending north of $200,000 a month with us. So, those are industries we had a hard time calling on the phone and saying, hey, it's Scott from Westward. Can I talk to you about your marketing? Back then in the day, we didn't really matter to them. Well, the fact is they know that we're one of the largest digital agencies in the country and that we've got a team of 80 people, of strategists and technicians, and it's just been a game changer for us. And again, we're not forsaking where we came from. That ad base is really important to us, but we've been able to bring in more top flight salespeople, more top flight, talented digital folks. And it's just been an amazing run for us. It's been really great. And, again, if you don't change, you die. And kind of that's where we are.
You guys sold the Village Voice a couple of years ago. And I gave you a hard time about that.
Yeah.
I said that it was something
I think we had a very long evening of discussion about that, if I remember.
Yeah, I said that you'd live to regret it. we just came from New York this morning, and I asked somebody if we could grab a voice so I could see who was in town. And they told me they can't remember the last time they saw a Village Voice, and they wouldn't know where to get one.
So just so we're both clear, I've not lived to regret that.
No, I thought it was only fair that I was wrong and you were right, and that's usually how a relationship works, by the way.
Right.
There's a history of this, but I was very clear that this was a big mistake, that you would live to regret it. And you were like, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're wrong. And it's only fair that I own that.
Yeah, that was tough. I mean, look, my family's back there. My roots run deep back there. We had great people there.
The brand is iconic.
The brand we named originally the company after the brand. Now it means different things. Big market, the speed of business changed. The way that people, and this is no news for anyone listening or for you or I, but the way that people consume media was changing underneath our feet at the time in New York. And I still think, when we were in New York, obviously that was ground zero, excuse a pun, of when, there was just all this negative energy down on print. And so, I think the voice and some of the quite frankly, some of the larger markets were much more hard to sustain than these Denver, Phoenix, Miami models. And a lot of it's because the infrastructure you have to carry, the cost of doing business in New York, the amount of papers you have to print to saturate, that model is old. It's dead. That model is dead. And so, for many, many, many reasons, but economics being the largest one, we felt it was time to get out of New York. And I think that we absolutely made a great move.
Is it because that music and viral things move so quick on the internet because of Twitter and Facebook and email and texting that people know so quickly when something cool is happening now that they don't need to pick up a paper?
The answer is yes. There's also, I'll try to paint this picture for you. If you picture a rep leaving the Village or down to the NYU campus and needing to go uptown to a meeting to meet with a doctor, okay, or a club or whatever. And the old model was that rep had to get on the subway and maybe a connecting subway to make it uptown. And in today's business environment, you can almost see business going by their head. Like they can't get there fast enough for it to be efficient. And in places like New York and some of the other markets where I can't have a rep go on at least 2, 3, or 4 sales calls a day, it's just not going to make business sense.
It's not cost effective.
Yeah. So I think it's the speed of consumption from content, and it's the speed of business. I mean, it's just changed. And that really in many of the markets just made the model outdated.
So the food side of the business on the tech side has become a huge part of your business, right?
It's always been a huge side of our business, the food side. But it's just really part of the fabric. I mean, but our food blogs and our food sections in many of the markets have a brand of their own, but they're really just part of the site.
Okay, and it's just one more thing, like the cannabis is and the music is. It's the lifestyle.
It's absolute lifestyle reference point, which is what we were originally. And so now, again, talking about speed of consumption, we want to be a resource for all things that are happening in our markets. And so food and music and culture and art and the calendar of events, that continues to be, where we want to be the leading local resource.
There was a moment that used to be my favorite of the year. And I mean, I grew up in this town, as I know you did too, and it's the site of Barry Fay's Fay Line Concerts Summer of Stars announcement. And the Westward Pullout was something that lived on my wall, the fold-out calendar. I waited for it to be delivered. Like we camped out like we did for tickets to get that thing. It was like that's something that's changed that I don't think we're ever getting back. But it was like, what's that moment that we moved from like these big announcements of seasons, and especially in this market where I never thought it'd go away?
Well, it actually did not go away. It's back. And Donnie Strasberg has brought that back. And now they run their own version of Summer of Stars every single year in April. So it's pretty cool. And we do it, obviously, we have a pullout. It feeds through. And obviously, printing has changed a lot over the years. And we've tried to maximize those opportunities with our glossy product here in Denver. And so we actually run a poster through the book that is stapled in that consumers can pull out and put on their wall. So just in the last few years, we kind of went back to that idea, and it's been something that we've stuck with
That's
AEG.
Really cool.
It's really cool.
That's neat. I'm glad to hear this is the only market that you guys are doing that in now, right?
That I know of, yeah.
Denver is a strong weekly that will probably continue to exist in one form or another, I believe, forever. And I think obviously the cannabis is going to help that and the strength of the music scene. Are there other markets that you're involved with that you believe will be able to stand their ground as print for the test of time?
Yeah, and there, I mentioned some of them at the top. I really think South Florida and the Miami market for us is a very similar market to Denver, but obviously with a different makeup of industries and advertisers. But
Right, that's a really big dance scene, and they
Yeah.
got a huge Cuban food industry.
Exactly, and the food, the whole vibe there is really good for us. Phoenix is,
The
a
New
jugger-
Times.
Exactly. I mean, the mother of them all for us. Denver is our flagship for sure, but Phoenix is where kind of the origins of this company started. Obviously, the back room of our technology is still there. A lot of my my officers and partners are there, but obviously Denver is kind of the mothership. Dallas is another market that I think will sustain and do very well, and and I think there's some others. I mean, there's some papers that we've sold that will continue, I think, to be here for a very long time. I think the City Pages in Minnesota is a tour de force. Very good entrenchment. The Daily newspaper actually bought them from us. They're really smart owners, and they're they really believe in the product. So again,
And it's a really great music community too. I mean,
Yeah.
you're naming some of the best music
Yeah.
cities in the world. I mean, Phoenix has always been a great market.
Yep.
Dallas is a bigger market than Denver
Yeah.
is, and
Yeah.
is a wealthy market.
Yep. Yeah. So when I kind of look at it, and again, my perspective is maybe a little jaded because I'm kind of looking at the markets differently now. I mean, I'm kind of thinking past, where will print survive, and I'm really kind of trying to put, pins in the map in terms of where we're going next with the agency product.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's a joke that I don't like very much. The line of print is dead, and I truly don't believe it is. I think that our budgets for print have been decreased and they've gone online, but that goes right back to you guys anyway, in the most part.
Yeah, I mean, here's where it is for me, and we own a national repping firm, and so we sell print advertising to the top 50 markets, even the markets that we don't own, and so we have a national print team and we have a national digital team that's selling SEO and the digital agency services, and it's a very weird dynamic when you think about those businesses, because when you are selling print nationally or when you're selling print even locally, I'm selling you an audience. Right? I'm selling you on the idea that I have the audience that you want. And at the same time, I own a digital agency where I'm telling you, let's talk about who you want to hit and who you want to make sure sees your ad. And I'm going to bring them to you. And let's cut out everything else that doesn't matter.
Right, because you're able to use the data to
That's
zero
right.
in
So-
on exactly who I'm looking
so
for.
like what you and I are doing in Seattle and what I've been talking to your team about. It's like, hey, let's talk about the shows. Let's talk about the audience for those shows. And we're going to go make sure that your ads are delivered right to those people. We won't waste an impression. We won't waste $1 on people that won't buy the ticket to that show anyway. So to me, it's the fundamental change of right now, I can bring the audience to you. You don't have to hope that you're hitting the audience. Your targeted audience inside the larger audience that these print properties have. Does that make sense?
It does, and my philosophy has always been I like to leave a little bit of breadcrumbs everywhere, all around town. Radio, cable, digital, print, street posters, and hopefully everybody finds their way back to me.
You're not going to, yeah, and you're a smart marketer. So I again,
Why, thank you.
We're having you're welcome. We're having a conversation kind of in a literal sense. I mean, I think you have to breadcrumb and you have to have exposure in all of the right places. But, I'm just giving you the dynamic between that print audience versus the audience that you want to target, that you can go get that audience right now.
So it's been a little while that you've been living in both spaces, but what was the moment where you realized we need to be online?
Well, it was very funny. We stumbled into this agency business, as a matter of fact. We'd recruited away. At the time, we were really investing in making sure that our sites were optimized for SEO and that our social channels were optimized. And so at the time, I had recruited away from Gannett, the director of social media and the director of SEO. And we happened upon these products by working on our own sites. So making sure that if you search best restaurants or best Italian or best venues, right, that all of the Westward.com channels would come up. And these guys had been playing around with some of these products over at Gannett. In fact, one of them, when I hired him, had showed me this deck. He's like, look, I can't wait to come over here, man. I just want to work. I want to work on content. I want to work on your site. He said, but check this out. This is the stuff we've been selling over at Gannett. And I actually didn't really even look at it. I said, yeah, whatever.
You skimmed it?
Yeah. And so he's based in Phoenix, and he works for my partner, Curtis. And Curtis called me months later. He's like, hey, man, did you see that deck that Kevin showed you? I was like, yeah. I saw it. He's like, man, we got to sell this like right now, tomorrow. We have to go back, and I want you to look at it. And sure as shit, we started selling those products, and we made them our own. And it was lightning in a bottle. I mean, I think when we started obviously at zero, we launched the agency business in 2013, and just that one product, that local SEO maps product, we now have 2,500 customers nationwide in international markets. So it has been, and that's just one of the products, right? I mean, we've got organic SEO, website development, social media management, all the other products, but just as an example of how fast it happened for us. And again, we did stumble into it. But I mean, obviously now it's our bread and butter.
But now you went running into it.
We went running. Yep. And so now, obviously, like we talked about, we're lighting up new markets as fast as we can.
Well, you change and redirect because you have to deal with the hand you're dealt, and you can't worry about playing the last hand. And you guys have done a good job of pivoting with that.
I think so too. I appreciate that, but I think so too.
I'm not sure that all of the media markets that we're dealing with, unfortunately, have figured that out yet.
They're not. And you and I talked about a market already that, in my mind, had a huge opportunity and just did not want to run in that digital space, and I think people will pay the price for that. We know they are. I mean, we know that the alternatives are struggling. I mean, if you do not have a digital offering outside of just your website, you're really not going to make it.
It was funny. I don't know if we ever talked about this, but when I went back to school in Eugene, I had taken a couple of copies of Westward back with me, and I took them to the Eugene Weekly guys, and I was like, they didn't have Music Life in their paper, and they were priced on a level that they couldn't have it. So I brought them the Westward, and I was like, I'm going to bring you guys an ad every week, but I'm going to bring you every other venue in town too. I want you guys to do a special music price because we're going to develop this here, and the music scene is going to live in here. And the guys, they thought about it, and they're just like, we can't run color every week. I'm like, we can do it in black and white. Your city isn't used to the color that they built up to in Denver. The concept of the ads, the number of them, all of the clubs. Per capita, we're going to do it in ratio, but I'm going to convince every venue, I'm going to bring them enough shows, I'm going to convince them all to run strip ads, and I'm going to run ads every week, and we're going to make people used to picking up the paper, and try to redevelop the Westward in the local paper. And they came kicking and screaming until they finally got that music was where the money was. But it was one of these things that I don't think everybody realizes, you know what, I should look and see what the other guys that are successful are doing around the country.
No, you and I have spoken about that story, and I mean, it continues to prove out. And look, we try to learn every day. I mean, we try to case as much from competition as we can. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
Well, I mean, just look bad if you're not doing the things that the guys that are selling out the arenas are doing and the stadiums are doing. You want the same tools.
Yep.
What would you recommend to somebody that's learning that space, learning marketing, to be the best things to dabble in as they're getting their feet wet?
Well, certainly on the promoter side, I guess for your audience, we've talked about this. I think programmatic advertising is a must. I mean, again, it's not so different than what you guys and most of our customers or partners are doing, inside of Facebook. And it's obviously it's an incredibly targeted environment, but you can get that same targeting, and many people who are listening know this, but you can get that same targeting outside of that black box with Facebook, right? And you can kind of go, high funnel to low funnel. You can go genre, down to artists. So, I mean, there's a lot, I think, available to promoters, both big and small. And obviously the big guys have their own internal divisions that are doing much of this right now.
Right, or they're outsourcing to Dash 2 or something.
That's right.
Sure.
Exactly. But, I think that we can, we have a lot of clubs, club owners that you and I are even friendly with. I mean, the ROI is unbelievable. We run, Facebook paid for a lot of the clubs, and the ROI that we deliver them is unbelievable. And again, it's
really
one FTE that they don't have to worry about.
That is an interesting thing. These are just small mom and pop venues that just don't have the team to do that themselves, and they know where all.
I mean, we have a partner in Aspen that we deliver 154% ROI on their Facebook too. Okay, so I
think I know who that is.
I think you do too. But, it's, again, less FTEs. We've got the resources. We've got the relationships already. It's something we can really help with. And again, it's not necessarily our main channel or our main target bucket right now, but we deliver really great results.
And that's digital space is just continuing to grow and see more and more eyeballs every month.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us.
It's great to see you, brother. Thank you.
I have had the pleasure of starting my career in Denver with Scott Tobias. He has been a great friend for 25 plus years. What an amazing character. So proud of what he's created in Denver and internationally now.
Hi, it's Mark Cates, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Dan, let's jump in. Some of the tweets of the past week. Can you humor me? Explain what was going on in your mind when you wrote each of these Promoter 101 tweets of the week.
Probably not much, Luke. Probably not much.
When the opener calls a tour a co-headline, and you just nod.
Sure, whatever makes you happy. No problem. I mean, we've all got the contract to know who walked out with the overage and the majority of the money, but sure, it's a co-headline.
Keeping a straight face as you announce a reunion tour featuring none of the original members of the band.
Yeah, this might be the toughest part of the job.
Dear every touring act in the world, you don't all have to be on the road this November.
Right? I mean, January is an awesome time to tour. Less traffic. The kids have got all that holiday cash they got from Grandma and Grandpa. Maybe spread it out just a little bit. Maybe, please.
That does it for Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. You can follow Dan on Twitter as @TheJew. If you have your own Promoter 101 thoughts, feel free to tweet them at us or email them over. Anything that makes us smile is going to get used on the air.
This is Tom Wildridge from Ticketmaster, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
We're excited for the return of 3 Questions. You've been asking for it, and it's back this week. We've got a special guest. Cheryl Bunce is with us. Welcome. Promoter 101, 3 Questions joining us. Cheryl Bunce, how are you doing?
Fabulous, Dan. How about you?
Excellent. You know, I love the show that you and Bill have. I think it's amazing how you guys have artists over to your home and the videos you guys shoot with them. It's a very cool thing.
Thanks. I greatly appreciate it. It's been very, very cool to do this. We've spent about 18 months putting the first season together and just had a blast doing it and have really enjoyed getting to know some of these artists much more so than just after a show.
Okay, and if people want to check the series out, it's free, right? And you can see it online?
Absolutely. I would recommend that they go to www.livemusicsociety.org. You'll see the trailer. You can scroll down and see the first 5 episodes. And in addition, you can get all the recipes for any of the meals that we cooked.
Awesome. Love that. I've watched like 3 of them so far, and I'm hooked. I can't wait to watch the rest of them. Yeah, it's going to be like a binge thing. It's so awesome. But you ready to play 3 Questions?
We are.
Awesome. Let's do this. What do you got for us?
Well, during our episodes of our series, The Live Music Society, we ask questions of the artist based on specific categories. So I'm just going to kind of mirror what I do and what Bill does during our series to the Promoter 101 3 Questions in the same way. So the first question, we're going to get to know you. What one fear would you like to conquer?
Wow, you stumped me there. Let's see if Luke's got a better answer than me, but so that way I can think about it for a second. Luke?
I suppose 2 big fears that I have are bees and heights. And I don't see myself really overcoming anything that looks like a bee or might sting me like a bee. But I hope to skydive one day soon here. My 30th birthday is coming up. I'm considering doing it around the birthday.
I honestly don't have like an amazing answer. You know, my biggest fear is that like people wouldn't want to go to live shows and experience music anymore because, you know, it's my life. It's not just my livelihood, but it's everything that excites me. So if what happened to the music industry ever happened to the concert industry, it would just completely like be life-altering for me. So I guess my biggest fear is that something changed and that the concert industry, the live music experience, wasn't as embraced as it is currently.
That's a great answer, and it's definitely, I think, some of us that, you know, have anything to do with the music business on the perimeter worry about every day. That's why we try to make the experience just that much more robust for every show we promote. So you ready for question number 2?
Probably not, but let's try it anyway.
All right. Well, these are questions that make you think. If you could spend one night with one of your heroes, who would it be, and what would you want to do?
Wow, you spent some time on these. I'm hoping to copy off of Luke's answer. What do you got, dude?
One of my heroes. Well, I don't know. I gotta say that he's no longer with us, but I would love some sort of night on the town just smoozing with Jerry Weintraub. Some sort of, I imagine, Dan Tana's dinner into some ritzy thing, ended up with drinks of Marmont. Just hearing stories and getting every bit of knowledge I could from that guy would have been a lifelong thing that I would love to have been a part of.
Okay, so one of my heroes, what would it be and what would I do? You know, I think it would be Bobby Cudd, and I would love to cook with Bobby Cudd. He's one of my favorite people in the music industry and on the planet. If you don't know him, he's Old Crow Medicine Show and Gillian Welch's agent, and he's just amazing. But he has taught me so much about the proper way to cook different things, like a real skillet and how to season it and, you know, things of this nature. Bobby knows food better than anybody else, I think, on the planet. And I would like to cook with Bobby. I think that would be a life goal. And I imagine he would probably, like, grant that wish if I actually asked him, which is probably something I should do, because that sounds like a fun thing. God damn it. I'm going to call Bobby and ask him. Yeah, you know what? And probably in advance of this running, because I think it's like, if it gets back to him any other way, he's going to just be annoyed with me. But yeah, no, I think cooking with Bobby Cudd, like, that's something that I would have fun doing.
That sounds fabulous. And let us know. We'd love to jump in.
That'd be very cool. Maybe turn it into an episode of the podcast, except I wouldn't want to worry about the production. I just want to be, like, doing it. So maybe not.
Yeah. Well, just keep us in mind. So I'm going to give you question number 3, and we like to dive into the music industry in our third round of questions. The purpose of an opening act used to be to warm up the audience. What is the purpose of the opening act in today's market?
Well, first of all, the purpose of the opening act was never to warm up the audience. That was just what we told the audience. Even back in the early days of the industry, it was about making sure the headliner played to a full room. So it was real live elevator music for the fans coming for the headliner. It's how they filled the room, and it's also how the venues kept people drinking for longer periods of time, because venues are only open for certain hours. So it extends the show, and you're more likely to hang out at the bar or in the lobby continuing to socialize and drink on a show during the openers than during the headliner. So that's the purpose of the opener in general now and back then. But of course, it's always about breaking acts, trying to get the new talent out, which is what the industry is trying to do. The venues just want you to drink, so they're extending the show, which is why on some of the club shows you'll see 4 or 5 bands sometimes. But in the case of an arena show, you're just looking to fill the room, and you just can't jump out and put the headliner on if you're playing to 13 to 80,000 people. You need to have everybody entering at different times, and the opener allows the room to have a gradual entrance of people. Otherwise, it would be like trying to board an airplane or the mass exiting of a show at the end of the night. Like, sometimes it's just a clusterfuck, and this helps avoid that.
I mean, I still think it serves a bit of that purpose. You know, it's not a one-size-fits-all function for every tour. Warming a stage and warming an audience is certainly a great thing that an opening act is going to provide, but some contexts it's part of building out a larger repertoire of a show, or developing an artist of which you might have some sort of songwriter or publisher interest in it. I think there can be a variety of functions that an opening act can serve, and it really depends on who that headlining artist is.
That's great. You know, as always, Dan, your perception and the answers you give are so insightful, and hopefully it broadens your audience's horizons on the industry, being a promoter, the artists themselves. But we really appreciate you having us participate in this week.
Well, we're bummed that we missed Bill, but we're stoked that we got the better part of the two halves, that's for sure.
Well, thanks again. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for being on Promoter 101, and everybody can catch you guys on the live shows that are up now on the internet. You have to check it out. It's an amazing thing. Give us that website one more time.
www.lifeshows.com. livemusicsociety.org.
It's a great way to see bands in an environment that you don't normally see them in, and you get a chance to see them cook a little bit and see the personality side of them shine, opposed to them trying to entertain the whole time. It's a really cool thing.
Thank you, Dan.
Cheryl, thanks for joining us on Promoter 101 for 3 questions. If you're out there listening and you'd like to be asking the 3 questions on an upcoming episode of this podcast, please shoot us an email at steiny@promoter101.net.
This is Bob Rue with Live Nation, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Dan, happy to be joined on the podcast by APA's Bruce Solar. He's here to talk about his history in the music business.
Promoter 101, we are in the lovely APA Hollywood offices of Beverly Hills. I'm joined with legendary agent Bruce Solar. Bruce, thank you so much for making time.
Thanks for having me.
So you've got an epic career. You've been with Cake from the early days. John is truly one of the most unique rock stars in the world.
Yes, he is.
And you guys have done amazing things. You've got many, many other historic acts over the years, Tegan and Sarah and Bootsy Collins, and the list goes on. But Cake being one of the more outstanding bands that are completely unique to themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I realized that this year was my 40th year in the music business, and primarily all of that is a agent. And Cake is definitely one of my prouder success stories, because I was with them from the very, very beginning when they would do 3 sets a night to right now when they do a strict 90 minutes.
So the entire ride of a career, you've seen them through different managers. You're part of the family.
Yes, I would say I'm part of the family. I'm there for the good times and the bad times and everything in between.
All right, and you're a music guy.
Yeah.
I mean, the word music nerd wouldn't be offensive to you.
No, I'm very nerdy about music. And that was one of the beauties of Cake, is that I really, really loved Cake when I first heard them, and turned on to Cake by a guy named Blaine Kaplan, who turned me on to 2 bands. He turned me on to Cake, and he turned me on to Sublime. He later went on to manage Sublime at the beginning. And I saw Cake on Halloween for the first time at Hotel Utah, this very small place in San Francisco, where at the end of the set, they came out dressed as the Go-Go's. And I was totally sold.
Okay, so you've been an agent for 40 years. You started in the Bay.
No, I actually started on the East Coast. I started outside of Boston. There was an ad in the Boston Phoenix that said music agent wanted, and it was really kind of that simple, except it said must know blues. And of everything, I probably knew blues least of anything. And I was more of a rock guy and more of I like jazz and folk, and I really liked the wimpy stuff. I really was into the folk stuff. So when I went to, it was a guy named Harry Chickles, and I went and interviewed with him, and I studied up on blues all day. He never asked me one question about blues. I walked in and he hired me. It was a much different time then. Harry Chickles turned out to be not only a blues agent who represented everybody that you saw later on in Rosebud, from Willie Dixon to John Lee Hooker, but he was also the biggest drug dealer in Boston, and he was also the biggest slum landlord. So it sort of all went together.
So you had a real business, because being a slum landlord is a legit business, regardless of how shady it is.
Yes, it's a
Whereas
legitimate
being
business.
a drug dealer, unless you're in Colorado or Washington or now here in California, isn't exactly considered legal.
Yes. So, but Harry provided multiple services for all his artists. Let's put it that way.
One-stop shopping. He was the original Walmart.
He was the original Walmart. And we don't know what happened to him. He ran for mayor. His last name was Chickles, and his slogan was "Save your nickels for Chickles." And he basically disappeared. I occasionally run into people from that day, from that era, that knew Harry, that we used to sell shows to, and they have heard numerous mysterious stories about Harry Chickles.
But did he disappeared kind of in a Hoffa sense of disappearing? Like he was there one day and then gone?
We don't know. We kind of think he might have left the country, but under auspicious circumstances.
Well, doing that drug dealing stuff kind of gets you into trouble sometimes.
So that's how I got started, basically.
Okay, so in early days, right? I mean, at that point, you're talking about the Weinsteins.
Yeah.
Were promoters too, right? Like in that part of the world.
Yeah, and we used to deal a lot with them up in the Buffalo area because they bought a lot of blues. I mean, they bought a lot of stuff like the John Lee Hookers and the Luther Allisons and the Mighty Joe Youngs and all that stuff. And they
So there were times where you were pitching Harvey Weinstein?
Yeah, there were times when we were pitching them on shows, and times we were selling them shows. It was interesting. They weren't who they are now, obviously, and it was a little easier to do at that point. It was easy to get people on the phone. It was very easy to get people on the phone 40 years ago. It was a way different kind of business.
All right, so you've got your own style of booking. You moved to the West Coast, obviously, into San Francisco, where you set up camp for a long time with your own agency.
Right.
Absolute Artists.
Yes.
And some of your bigger acts at the time were Cake, and you had Sublime, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I had Cake, Sublime, Train, Ricky Lee Jones, a number of artists. And through the years, and I signed acts like the Psychedelic Furs and on and on and on. Whole big list of people. We had a very cool boutique agency in San Francisco.
And at some point, the agency group coaxed you down to L.A., where you became part of the all-star team that is Steve Martin, Andy Summers, you, Guy Richards. The list goes on.
Yeah,
but you guys are the unit.
You want to know the quick story on that?
Yeah.
Basically, okay. So I was in San Francisco. I was pretty happy. We were doing pretty well. But that year, though, we were having a real off year. And I went to the APAP convention, the Performing Arts Convention in New York, because I really worked that convention as a small company. It brought in a lot of income to us way back then. And I was...
You have to, just to keep warm in January in New York. You got to hustle.
You got to hustle. So my booth was packed. My little agency was packed. And next door was the agency group. And there was absolutely nobody in there except for Steve Martin and Dave Hart. And basically, Steve Martin was trying to grab a smoke anytime he could in the booth, and they looked at my booth, and I knew Steve for a long time. I didn't really know Dave, except that I had booked a tour for one of Dave's clients during the swing era, and I can't remember the name. Maybe it'll come to me later, but it was a swing group.
But I bet he was wearing a New York Yankees hat.
Yes, he was. And the swing phenom thing busted right before the tour started. It went away. It just went away. And I kept every date in there. And Dave was always very, very impressed. I was able to keep every date in and make the tour happen. And it was called the Freshetta Pizza Swing Tour. They were the sponsor of the tour. So, he was telling Steve about that because we're booths right next to each other. And at some point, Steve goes, well, I've known you for a long time. And Dave thinks that you were just the greatest, agent for keeping this tour in during the swing bust, basically. And we're opening an office in L.A. Do you want to come down there? And at first I said no. But then they kept making it better and better and better for me to do it. And that's how I, ended up in L.A. with the agency group. I eventually told my wife and daughter, who did not want to move from San Francisco, that let me go down there for a year and see how it works. And it was, I've been there since. And they actually joined me finally a year later.
Okay, but you were connected deep into the Bay, so that was a big move for you.
Yeah.
That was a scene. You were part of that scene, Don Holliday and that whole crew of Michael Bailey. You were part of that world.
Yeah. I was basically the guy that could go anywhere and get into any room, and it was sort of, even when I left, Don Holliday threw me this surprise party at Slim's, where she invited all my artists, and all these people showed up, all these promoters, all these people from Bill Graham to Annie O'Toole to people like that. Yeah.
So you've got your own style on how you book things.
Yeah.
You are very comfortable in your way. You've been doing it for a long time. You work with who you want to work with. You return what calls you want to return, and you get to choose who you want to work with at this point of your career.
That's pretty much correct. I mean, I've been fortunate to figure out that by having a good person work with me, that it makes up for some of my lack of maybe returning a phone call or getting immediately back to somebody. So I
wasn't necessarily going there yet. That wasn't what I meant.
Well, it's fairly true. I mean, it's not 100% true. And I guess at this point in my career, it's a little bit more true than it used to be. But I do work with a great woman named Joan Lee, who came over from William Morris, who's been with me for a long time now. And between the two of us, we pretty much get everything done.
She's definitely more detail-oriented than you are.
Oh, yeah. She's way more detail-oriented than I am, which is awesome for me because I'm more the people's person. And
You're a schmoozer.
And she's the fact-oriented person, so...
No, it's good. I wasn't trying to insult you and saying that you.
No. It's the truth. So go ahead.
Okay, and then you are someone that sees the value in a tour and thinks you know what an act is worth, and goes after that. You're an agent that truly believes this is the value of the act in the market, and you don't like to undersell your acts.
No, I don't like to undersell my acts, but I also don't like to oversell my acts. So there's a number of times when I'll get an offer and I'll say, well, because of that ticket price, it's too much money. Let's lower the ticket price and make it work, I'm not just, that's what I do. I try to make it work for everybody and try to work with the promoter. And, we all have to survive together, basically. And occasionally, yeah, I do really believe in my act. So occasionally over the years, you always make a mistake. You're thinking, well, this is going to be the greatest tour ever. It's like when myself and Ralph James out of Canada, we booked Ian Gillan from Deep Purple, and we're thinking, wow, this is going to do great. And nobody wanted to go, unfortunately. So it was, it was one of those cases where we're really overbooked, and you have an artist that didn't want to take any kind of reductions because of their history. But we made it work, at the end of the day. But that's what I do. I look at myself as someone that tries to make it work.
Okay, and we've done a lot of business together over the years, and we've been on both sides of great shows and trouble shows, and we've made and lost money together. But overall, we've made good money together.
Yeah.
From an experience of doing a lot of business with you over many years, I've seen the reality of the fight with you, where it's you state your case, you let me state my case, and we try to find the middle ground of who's right.
Yes.
And you're good about listening. It's not just we get $100,000 per market. It doesn't matter if it's Des Moines or Chicago. It's $100,000 a night. That's never been the attitude. It's okay. This is Des Moines. This is why we should pay this in Des Moines. Okay, this is Columbus. It's a better market. Maybe we can pay this. And the argument definitely weighs. And you're good about listening to that.
Well, I think a big part of that reason is because early in my career, when I took a break from being an agent, I became a promoter. And I actually promoted everything from Stevie Ray Vaughan to Frank Zappa. But I lost money. And I think a couple of the biggest losses I took, I felt, were because the agent wasn't really upfront with me. So because of that, I think I have a little more empathy and understanding of what a promoter goes through. And knowing that, when you book an act, say, for example, Frank Zappa, when I did Frank Zappa, which was great, and it did a lot of people, but because of all the last-minute things that the agent at the time threw into the deal, we didn't make any money. So I sort of get that. I do understand that. It's not sort of. I do understand what the promoter goes through. And also, because I've been an agent so long, I know that part of the business.
Okay, and I think there's something to be said for that, because promoters vote with their wallet. So your bedside manner definitely matters in this industry. So when a promoter's losing on a show and you don't have empathy, you don't care, that may do more damage than letting the promoter lose money. Promoter's going to lose by contract. We have to. And if you can't do anything about it, how you handle that conversation gently or I don't give a shit really may affect that next phone call that you make to that promoter.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's all part of it. I mean, it's sort of like if you really handle the situation well with a guy that's losing his shirt, it's more likely that he's still going to do business with you. If you totally screw him over and don't talk to him and ignore him and don't deal with the problem, they won't want to do business with you, or at least give you what you want on the next show, or trust that you're telling them the truth. I mean, you've probably dealt with this yourself,
Well, and it's always fun going into a big agency like this, because walking the hallway, there's a ton of agents here that I do business with.
Right.
And at any given moment, I'm doing a bunch of shows with APA and many different agents on the floor. So some of them are making me money. Some of them are losing me money. Some of them want me to do shows I know I shouldn't do. Some of them have shows I really want to do. And that's a whole lot of different social interaction going on in the course of a hallway.
Yeah, and it's also different when you work at a bigger company like I do now than when I had my own shop. When you have your own shop, because it's your money, you can basically work things out sometimes a little bit better than when you're working for a big company, because you have other people to be responsible to. You have bean counters, you have whatever. You have people that are looking at what you're doing more than when you have your own shop. And that's a good thing in a way, too. And you're also, I feel that you're sort of, as an agent, you have to care about the other agents you work with. And if you screw over a promoter, you're screwing over that promoter maybe with every agent at the company. Because a lot of times promoters don't look at it as, well, Bruce Solar screwed me over. It's like APA screwed me over.
Let's talk about one of the biggest tours on the road for the last 2 years, Brian Wilson's 50th anniversary of Pet Sounds. You were a major player in putting that together.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to come up with something that would differentiate us from basically the Beach Boys, differentiate us from a lot of other tours. So Brian had done the Pet Sounds tour in 2001, but very limited. And it worked really, really well. And it was the 50th anniversary. It's one of the greatest albums of all time. It was sort of a no-brainer. The other great thing about it was that we knew that this album is short. So you're not only getting Pet Sounds, but you're getting greatest hits on top of that. And you're getting a really long show with just tons and tons of great material. And Brian's loving it. He doesn't want to come off the road. He is just absolutely loving it.
Because you're adding a fourth leg now, right?
Yeah, yeah. And maybe there's going to be even another leg. I mean, it's sort of, he's and all over the world, and he's playing places he never played before. So it wasn't like, a stroke of genius to say, go out and do your biggest album, critically at least.
Well, waiting 50 years definitely is a qualifier.
Yeah. Also, it wasn't like, Brian's numbers historically had been sort of up and down. And, so it was a little bit convincing to get promoters to buy into the idea that this would work.
Was there a little more heat coming off the Beach Boy reunion tour that they did?
Well, there was two things that I think really, really helped this tour. The Beach Boy reunion tour, and then later the movie, Love and Mercy. The fact that Love and Mercy came out was a fairly successful movie. Open up a lot of people to Brian Wilson. So, I mean, who he was.
Was it a successful movie, or was it kind of an indie movie, right?
It was an indie movie, but as an indie movie, it was successful.
I mean, I love it. I think it's great. I watch it at least every 3 or 4 months.
It was one of those movies where it didn't do tremendous business at the box office. It did okay at business, but it was a big hit after. On
Rock the Netflix.
Yeah, on the Netflix, yeah, and on the planes and on things like that. So I talked to a lot of people just in general life that have seen that movie, but didn't see it at the theater, which may be the way of the world now anyways. Right?
So how do you get into business? Because Brian Wilson hasn't always been your client. How do you get into business with someone that is impossible to find because he doesn't go out and hasn't been touring?
Well, honestly,
how does that come about?
Honestly, it happened because at the agency group, Neil Warnock had been Brian Wilson's agent for years, probably 25 years. And he had been involved with the Beach Boy reunion. And when Steve Martin was, I mean, I wish I could say that I did something really amazing to get Brian Wilson, but it was basically just right, good timing. When Steve Martin left to go to APA, left agency group, Brian was his client, and we shared it. And so when he left, the management of Brian Wilson wanted to leave it with Neil, and so wanted to leave it at the agency group, and I was the lucky recipient of being able to book Brian Wilson. And so then when I came here, I think the management realized, well, the two key players in the States that had booked Brian, myself and Steve, and then also Andy Summers had been very involved with it, were now all at APA. So it made sense to move the act to APA. But I would say that myself and Andy are the prime contacts for Brian, and we do most of the stuff with him. But Steve and Neil Warnock were very influential in that happening. So
you and Andy Summers, essentially partners since the early agency group LA days.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I didn't really know Andy. I mean, I knew of Andy and who he was, but when I used to call Andy a bandwagon, he would never talk to me. He always put me on with Val Wolf. And he'll tell you that to this day. He didn't want to talk to me. He didn't really know me, so I was Val's guy. And then when those Val, it's a long conversation usually.
Long story short.
So I got to know Val very well, but not Andy. And then when we started working together at the agency group almost like 1 month apart, and it was the very, very beginning of the LA office. So we basically sort of became fast friends almost immediately. We had a lot of the same taste in music. We had a lot of the same taste in a lot of things, except for probably food.
Yeah, because you're a little more worldly with food, and Andy's a little more reserved.
Yeah, Andy's a ketchup guy, basically.
Meat and potatoes.
But we became fast friends, and we were really good friends the entire time at the agency group. We were like two peas in a pod, and so
maybe you would say the Jewish Bert and Ernie.
Yeah. So, when Steve Martin left originally to come to APA when his contract was up, and then Andy left, same thing. It was sort of kind of lonely over there without Andy. So, I made the move, basically. And we're often together.
Yeah, and it's been well documented, and we've certainly talked about it on the podcast, the transition from Andy, Steve, on top of you and Guy Richards, and there's a handful of other people that have made the jump too.
Seth Rappaport, Val Wolf. Yeah.
Right, including some other people that left before it even happened. Like Noel was originally agency group person, came over before that. But there's a huge agency group vibe that exists in this office now.
Yeah, and it.
I mean, John Panel was there as well.
John Panel, Keith Nesbitt was there.
You put the band back together.
And it's an interesting situation because it sort of has that agency group feel over here now, but it also has got that APA feel. I mean, where the agency group is loosey-goosey, I guess APA is a little bit more...
So where Gosnell meets Steve Martin?
Yeah, there's a little... which we probably needed. So if Jim Gosnell was the CEO, let's say, example of the agency group, it would have been pretty cool, you know? So, I mean, you know... Jim had been trying to hire me for, every time my contract was up. I would. Well,
and even before that, you as absolute artists would have fit into the old APA very well.
Yes, absolutely.
Without any of the agency group attached to that, you would have transformed into this agency seamlessly. You would have been great in their arts department.
Yeah, because, I mean, frankly, like I said earlier, the agency group before I left, they had really transitioned into something by hiring people like Andrea Johnson and stuff. And they had became a player.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And they became a player in that world.
Okay, so it's Promoter 101. We got you. We got to take advantage of it. You're a senior agent. What are the things that a promoter can do to get you on the phone? And I'm not talking about a promoter that knows you forever, that can pick up the phone and tell you, that sends you an email saying, I need to talk to you. If I send you an email or a text saying, I need you, you'll call me. I know that.
Yeah.
But how do you get on the phone with Bruce Solar if you don't know the name? Like, the reputation isn't built yet. You're just getting into the business. You want to have a chance at your ex. What does a promoter need to do? A club buyer?
I think you probably need to start with Joan, frankly, And then we talk a lot, and Joan will say, this is serious. You should talk to this person, blah, 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 blah. And it kind of filters things out because you get a lot of calls that are just like, I want to book cake at a club. I've got $250, And
oh, dude, I'll take that deal.
You take that deal, right? So, and the other thing is,
I got to cross the tour though.
The other thing that I should kind of make clear, so it doesn't sound like I'm a total dick about returning calls, is that one of the things is when I came here, part of my job here is new business. So I'm involved a lot in looking at agencies, looking at agents, looking at ways to build out the company, things of that nature. And that was part of my deal with coming here. It wasn't just about, I was actually very clear when I came here that my number one job anymore wasn't being a booking agent. My number one job was, because at the agency group, I was very involved with building out. I was involved with a lot of hirings,
And you help run the office.
Yeah, and also to be a mentor for the people that work here, and it was a little bit different. Whereas with Andy, he's booking agent. He's a great booking agent, and so it's a little bit different mentality. Do
you think Andy's a better agent than you are?
Andy's technically better than me. I mean, he's technically better. I mean, there's no.
You're talking about the agent part. You're not talking about necessarily being a better businessman in general. You're talking about
we're probably both equal.
But you're talking about
both really
an
good
agent within itself. You think you might be a better.
Yeah, and definitely. And then
And I think Andy would probably say he thinks Guy Richards is probably the best agent in the building.
Yeah, we would all say that. As far as
like by the book,
pure agent,
he's the best. Agent.
He's the best. Me and Andy still like to fuck around, basically. There's no fucking around with Guy. Guy is Guy.
Not to say that he doesn't have a personality. He's got
he's got a personality. But he's got, he sits
But by the book,
yeah,
he's the agent that everybody looks up to. He does it the way you do it.
He does it the way his artists are extremely happy. They get taken care of really well. He's very detail oriented. He's really good. He's really, really good.
So if somebody wants to get you on the phone, they got to go through Joan. But what should they be prepared to do? Because you're not selling cake to a new promoter the first time they call. You're just not.
Well,
doing
they should be.
Like Mitch Rosen selling Kiss to somebody the first time they call. You're not selling cake to somebody the first time they call. You got to earn that.
They should be aware of my roster, and they should be aware of the younger people in my roster, and they should know my whole roster. Because
give us the hits.
Okay, well, somebody calls and says, "Okay, Alex."
No, I meant the roster. Like,
oh well,
they should be aware of your roster. Give it up.
Well, I'm going to just talk about. They should be aware that we represent Alex Leahy from Australia because she's starting to really happen, and they should know who that is. You want to get me on the phone? Call me up and leave a message. I want to talk to you about Alex Leahy. Not that you want to talk to me about cake, because then I'm going to put you over with Joan. But you call me and you say, I want to talk about Alex Leahy. I'll get right on the phone with you because I'm very excited about her, new artist, and I want to be involved in the build with her.
You're going to get 500 phone calls about Alex Leahy next week. You know that.
That's okay. That's okay. We could... Basically, we would be fine with that. And I could talk about Alex Leahy all day long. But that's how you get me on the phone. I mean, you can call me about the psychedelic furs, KMFDM, any of this stuff. My roster's pretty diverse. You know, it's all over the place. Brian Wilson, whatever. But if you're a newer promoter and you're calling me about Brian Wilson, know what you're talking about. And I also...
Because that's a pretty difficult show to produce. You really have to have chops to produce that show.
Right.
Now, it's a theater show. It's pretty simple production-wise, but you have to be able to handle the needs of him in real time.
Oh yeah. It's a lot of work, and it's also as an agent, you know, as good a relationship as you may have with an artist, you always have to be on top of it and make sure you don't do the wrong thing by putting him in the hands of somebody that's going to do the wrong thing.
I mean, is that something that you worry about when you're looking at an offer? Maybe one guy's offers $10,000 more, but you know the other guy has the experience that can handle the production and the nuance that's involved with a certain artist?
Yeah, especially with a Brian Wilson. Now, back to like Alex Leahy, if it's an Alex Leahy and it's a younger promoter and they're gung-ho and they really want to get into the business and learn and do whatever, you're more likely to take a shot, you know?
Younger act more forgiving.
Yeah, younger act more forgiving. Help. Everybody has to start somewhere as a promoter. So it's not like when you started as a promoter, you couldn't immediately do the big acts that you're doing right now. You had to build into that.
You sold me Peach.
Yeah, Mark Adler's band, you know, from the end. That's always funny when I talk to Mark Adler because I was his agent, you know, and now I sell him shows, you know. But you got to start somewhere and build up. I also like people that are really into music because that's what I am. So if somebody calls me and wants to talk about, Surf's Up, or they want to talk to me about Fashion Nugget or things like that, I'm more likely probably to take their call. If somebody sends me an email and says, well, I really like this, this, and this, and this, and you could tell they're a music person, I like that. I may not sell them a show, but I'll talk to you, you know, and talk and have that conversation.
No, it's cool. And your roster is diverse. I love that you book Jeff Bridges. You book the dude.
Yeah, I love Jeff Bridges. One of my favorite artists that I book. He is so the dude.
And is that the show? Does he come out basically as that character that he toured as?
No, he comes out. This is the thing about Jeff. He comes out. He does a lot of stuff from Crazy Heart. He does covers. He has a killer band. But he's engaging, and he will tell stories. I mean, he doesn't care. Like, a lot of artists would be like, oh, don't call me the dude. Like, people yell out the dude from the audience the entire show, and he doesn't care. He embraces it, you know? And then he talks to them, and he talks to every single person that wants to talk to him. Like, you really can't have a sold meet and greet with Jeff Bridges, because Jeff Bridges talks to everybody anyways. And that's a pretty cool thing.
So you going to work more?
Probably not. He just works when he works, because the problem is the amount of money. It's a good problem for him to have, that he makes making a movie is so substantially more than doing music, that he kind of does movies more. But occasionally you get him to work a little bit, you know.
I have the same problem with the Trailer Park Boys. They make so much money on Netflix with their series.
Right.
It's hard to get them on the road to come pick up the pennies. They're making these huge dollars that are falling from Netflix.
So Jeff loves playing music. I mean, he loves playing music. It's just more the way of life, and the shows are good. I mean, the shows are good. It's just, the best way to book a Jeff Bridges date is to have something open, 3.5 weeks from now, and then you know that he's open to do the show.
Right, because he has to cancel to take a film if you book 6 months out.
Yeah. Or with Jeff, we have this clause that he's allowed to cancel, 6 weeks out. And for a festival and things like that, that's a difficult thing to ask,
Right. Comics do that a lot, too, because of film and TV stuff pops up.
Right,
they have those 60-day, 90-day windows.
Yeah. But, I have to tell you, Jeff is like the nicest guy. I mean, he's sort of like, you email Jeff, he emails you right back, and he works with the same people as Brian Wilson, coincidentally. So that's kind of cool too,
Oh, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
One-stop shop.
Yeah.
That'd be a great package. You should put that out in the fall. I like it. Any other tips that you have for young promoters coming up or even young agents coming up?
Well, I would just say learn your craft, basically. Know what you're talking about. Me also say, hey, I have this facility, or you're talking to Joan even, have this facility. This is what the sound and lights are like. This is what this is like. This is who's playing there. This is the gross. This is, these are things you can learn, by reading books and going on the internet and whatever else. And you should be prepared. I can't tell you how many people call and have no idea what a versus deal is or what a plus deal is, and that are promoters.
We should probably go over that on the podcast some days, like walk people through the basics of that. That's not a bad idea, the different deals. Before we let you go, can we do some quick speed round questions?
Yeah, sure.
Billboard or Polestar?
I will say I went to Billboard for the first time in like 5 years last year. I'd say, are you talking about the conferences or are you talking about the...
I was actually talking about the magazine, but you know what? Conference is good.
Conferences, 50-50 on that one. I like Billboard for different reasons than Polestar. Polestar, I usually know more people. Billboard tends to be a little more educational.
Which one do you go to for your news?
Generally, these days, for touring news, Polestar.
Okay.
For just industry news, obviously, Billboard.
AEG or Live Nation?
I go by promoters. Now, that's a safe answer, right? But I would say I lean towards AEG because there's more promoters at AEG that I have these really long relationships with. And then there's certain promoters at Live Nation that I love. But I would say overall, I probably would lean towards AEG,
Irving Azoff or God?
Funny enough, as long as I've been in the business, I don't know Irving all that well personally, and just a little bit. And so I would have to say neither.
Neither. None of the above. Awesome. Bruce Solar, thank you so much for taking time with us on Promoter 101.
Thanks, Dan.
Solar has worked with the best of them. He's got such great ears. Fun to have him on the podcast. Really a menschy guy. Really, really, really look up to Bruce. That was a great interview.
Hi, this is Heath Miller.
Becca Leifer.
Ed Mike Cohn.
Derek Dimmenstein.
Jason Kupperman.
Jason Miller.
John Schur.
Marcia Vlasic.
Mike Fruitman. Ricardo Bacco.
Peter Schwartz.
Nick Storch.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Dan, we got some birthdays coming up this week from October 9th to the 15th, 2017.
October 9th, this Monday, the incredible Harvey Leeds, Agent to the Stars, Kara Lewis, Len Chensfield, Mo Green, and Paul Burry.
On Tuesday, the man on the ground in Durham, Deepak's own Taki Pappas, AG's and fellow Penn Stater Mr. Adam Weiser, Jerry Goldman, and WME's Kevin Neal.
Wednesday, CID's Dan Berkowitz, Emporium's Joel Domas, Mark Geiger from that William Morris Endeavor, AEG's Nick Sturch, Fenway's Mark Katz, Adrian Ross, and AEG Shanghai Connie Shao.
On Thursday, wishing a happy birthday to Live Nation's Jeff Gordon.
Friday, ICM Partners Ryan Nagel, and producer, arranger, Grammy winner extraordinaire, Ben Bram.
On Saturday, wishing a happy birthday to Lee Smith, Keith Levy, and Colleen Flynn.
Sunday, Jen Fedrizzi and Carl Weinstein.
Happy birthday to everybody from the gang of Promoter 101.
Hey, it's Josh Body from the Bowery Presents, and I'm here on Promoter 101.
Happy to be joined for a special interview for this week's Promoter 101 by legendary tour bus driver Les Ingram. He's given us a bird's eye view of life on the road.
Promoter 101, we're in Kansas City, and I'm joined by bus driver extraordinaire. Les Ingram is in the house. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Hey, I appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
So you get to work with some of the greatest acts in the world. Right now you're out with Trailer Park Boys, but you're essentially driving a house for rock stars on the road and having to keep them safe and get them from point A to point B on schedule without losing your composure. Like, that's a lot of responsibility.
It is. And it's great that bands, they trust you when they get to know you. They always request you to do more of their tours. And that's the big thing you said.
It's like the highest honor, right?
It is, absolutely. The biggest thing you said was safety, getting them point A to point B safely. It's all about the drive. It's all about me getting my rest during the day and getting there safely overnight to where they need to be.
I noticed last night there was one toast, and only one toast at a very big dinner. You have the smoothest drive any of these guys had ever had, and they've raised a glass to you. That's a really high honor. And it was somebody else's birthday, but yet they toasted you. I thought... Then these are guys that have been on the road a very long time. They know a good driver from a bad driver. That's that's got to be a really nice pat on the back.
It was great. I didn't see it coming, and these guys are phenomenal. I mean, whenever you start a tour with a new band you never worked with, you wonder, how's it going to go right away? And from day one, these guys have been this super nice. Included me in everything, take care of me, always make sure that I get my sleep, make sure my hotel room's ready when I get there. It's been a blast.
All right, now let's give the world a little bit of an understanding. What is the responsibility of a bus driver? Because it's not just getting from point A to point B. Your job doesn't end and you just get to go to the hotel. You have a course to chart. You have to maintain the bus. What else is involved?
Yeah, absolutely. We have logs. We're just like truck drivers. We have to do logs. We're mandated. We can only drive so many hours, and we have to have so many hours off. But you're right. It's not just the driving. It's maintaining the bus, because the thing you always hear is the show must go on. And when that bus breaks down, you got to figure out how to get that bus fixed. Or if it can't be fixed, you got to figure out a way to get them to the show. Because if they miss a show, that's not good. They're not getting paid, and it's just not a good thing. But yeah, so as far as the logs, taking care of the bus, making sure it's clean inside and out. These guys don't want to ride around in a dirty bus. You know, they're paying for this experience, and they want it to be a great experience, and I try to give that to them.
In some ways, it's like a 5-star hotel where there's certainly different levels of bus companies out there, and the experience you guys are delivering is that of a upgraded luxury liner on the road.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We want these guys to feel as comfortable as possible when they're out there. Like you said, when they're on the road, it's their home away from home. Everything they need there is right at their fingertips. You just got to make sure that you take care of it, and it's constantly working, and make sure that, they're happy.
Okay, now how do you get into the line of... Because this is a very particular industry. Like, you don't just wake up one day and say, you know what? I want to drive rock stars around the country in a big-ass, beautiful version of a Winnebago, which is essentially, these are the nicest Winnebagos in the world, but they're fucking huge.
Yeah, in high school, I worked at an amphitheater in Cincinnati, Ohio called Riverbend, and I'd always thought it was the coolest thing when those buses and drivers came pulling in there. I was mesmerized by it. And I said one day I would think I'd like to do that, and roughly 9 years ago, I reached out to a company, and they took a chance on me. It's not easy to get in the business, that's for sure.
You basically have to go to truck driving school to learn how to drive a bus like this?
No, not really. I was driving a truck before I did this, but you have to have a CDL license. You have to have a passenger endorsement.
CDL is just a commercial truck driver's license.
Yeah. So you have to have things like that to even be considered. But the experience is nice that you have a CDL and you've had it for a long time. So that comes in handy.
Okay. So now that you're on the road, you've been doing this for 9 years, and you tend to get requested by the acts you've worked with. It's probably hard for a new act to wind up with somebody like you, since you do have a list of preferred clients already.
It is. And like I said, I try to accommodate whenever I can, but sometimes things just fall into place. You might have 2 weeks off, and a band needs a driver for a week. So it fits right in your schedule. So, but I love the new bands. They're great.
Who are some of the nicer people that you've had the opportunity to work for?
Wow. Ricky Rocket from Poison, probably one of the nicest guys. So humble, just so laid back. Trying to think. These guys have been, phenomenal.
Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah, Trailer Park Boys have been phenomenal from day one, and that's been amazing too. I try not to get too starstruck anymore as far as that goes. But, so many different artists. It's just been amazing. It's hard to pick out who was the good, because there's really been no bad artists. But,
I know you wouldn't tell me because you're professional, even if there was. I know there's a line of decorum that you don't...
True.
If Whitney Houston had hit you over the head with a coffee mug, you would save that for your personal, archives.
Right, true.
Okay, is there particular roads or tours or times of the year that you're just, man, this is the worst possible thing I could get?
Canada in the wintertime. The roads, oh wow. It's almost like a ski slope for the bus.
And that seems to be a popular time for a lot of acts because there's not a ton of traffic up there. People are taking advantage of that. So there's always somebody running around those back roads of Canada.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
It's going to be a new show, Ice Road Tour Bus Drivers.
That would be a good show.
Be a scary show. Yeah, it's amazing. I'm always shocked at the places you guys can make buses go. Whether it's figuring out how to get to Alaska and like make that drive happen. It's always impressive.
I just did a run recently with a country artist, and we had to put the bus and the trailer on a ferry from Seattle over to Canada. And I couldn't believe that this ferry had not only my bus, but 10 other buses and about 20 tractor trailers on a ferry going across to Canada. I was amazed by it.
Okay, so let's talk about what is the best experience. Like, what are the favorite places that you've gotten to drive and the legs of road where you're like, yeah, this is a great day on the road?
As far as scenery, I love going through Wyoming, Montana, Colorado. I love the scenery. When it comes to the hustle and bustle, without a doubt, it's Las Vegas. I love going to Vegas. I can take an act to Vegas. It's icing on the cake for me.
Is it the drive? Is it the beauty? Or do you just like Vegas?
I just like Vegas.
Has that got to be a tricky thing, taking a bus down the strip and parking in Vegas? I got to imagine New York, driving through those Manhattan streets have got to be difficult with a bus.
Absolutely. New York is the worst. The absolute worst. Whenever I have to drive into New York City, I just kind of cringe a little bit, but luckily I've been to a lot of these places before, so I know how to get in and out quickly, and it's all about getting in the middle of the night too, when there's no traffic on the roads. That's huge. If you come in during the day, what could be a 15-minute drive will turn into 2 hours because of traffic in New York City.
So you prefer to drive at night?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Interesting. I find that actually very fascinating. Today was a beautiful day. It was a short drive from St. Louis to Kansas City, and it was a day drive, but it was such a beautiful scenery kind of thing. I would think that would be a nice thing, but driving at night's easier for you.
It is. There's less traffic on the road for one. There tends to be less idiots on the road.
You're talking about civilian drivers that just
civilian
cut people off quickly,
Absolutely.
that don't realize that there's a freight train behind them that can't stop on a dime.
This is very true. Very true. Yeah, and it's just, for me too, it's a little bit of peace and quiet for me. Everybody's asleep. I'm just in my own little world, just driving. But yeah, the nighttime driving, plus the construction zones, just getting through them are so much easier to do at night than they are during the day. So that's a main reason of driving at night too.
That's got to be just a different world completely. Cutting through the traffic in those buses, learning how to deal with that, getting comfortable with that. So some of the experiences on the road, what are some of the cool things? Because you get to go to city by city day, and I know you wind up sleeping a lot of it because you drive, then you have to sleep during the day while the band is doing the show. Then you're back at the venue, but you get some time off from time to time, and you get to see some stuff. What experiences would you not have gotten to do otherwise? And I'm not talking about like getting to hobnob with the celebrities. I mean, that's a given.
Right. Yeah. I don't know, the experience of getting to know these guys too. Everybody sees them as they perform. They don't get to see the other side like I do. So the experience, I love hanging out with these guys on an off day sometimes. It's just, they're just normal people. They live their life normally, and it's funny. 1 minute they're in character, and 1 minute they're just as normal as they can be. And to me, I think when they're normal like that, and it's just amazing.
Awesome. Right on, man. I want to thank you so much for taking time and talking to us.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Les Ingram, bus driver extraordinaire on Promoter 101. Les is an amazing guy. It's easy to see why the acts fight for his services. Also thrilled that we were able to grab a little bit of time from him, as it's rare that we get to rub elbows with some of the better drivers in the business, as they're usually sleeping during the shows, as they work when we don't, and they make sure the drivers they work when we don't, and they make sure the acts get to where they need to be. Otherwise, there'd be no shows, and they make sure it happens safely in some of the hardest conditions: sleet, snow, ice, doesn't matter. They get them there and on time. These guys are the heroes of our industry.
Hey everyone, this is Cindy Leinott,
Bruce Solar,
Ali Spagnola,
Ari Herstand,
J-Bo Lewis,
Michael Yerke,
John Meglin,
David Ritz, Larry Butler,
Andy Gould,
John Finberg,
Kira Finkenberg,
Jonathan Shank.
You are listening to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
If you want to reach out to us, send us an email to steiny@promoter101.net. As always, we promise to read every email and to respond to everything in a timely manner, because we care. Kinda.
Our next podcast is going to be recorded live this coming Thursday at the Berklee College of Music's Popular Institute. We're going to be joined by Paradigm's Todd Walker, Bowery presents Josh Body. We got Rocks On, Dan Millen asking us 3 questions. And we're going to be joined by Fenway Recordings, Mr. Mark Cates. That's the manager to MGMT and Mission to Burma. We want to see you out there live for the podcast on Thursday. But if you can't make it live, send in a question or just tune in next week as we release the live broadcast of that here on Promoter 101.
The following week is our 1-year anniversary. We'll be airing the AIBA episode with Bob Rue, so you'll be able to catch that in its entirety as well. And then we return live the following week with a very special guest podcast. Not allowed to announce who it is yet, but he's, dare I say, one of the biggest agents on the planet. Pretty excited about that one, huh, Luke?
Very pumped about that.
Cool. So that's it. We're going to be on the road for a little while. We'll see you soon. We're excited about it. Thank you so much for bearing with us. We know it's been a hard week for everyone throughout the industry and outside of it. We all got to stick together and keep hanging in there. We're wishing you sold out shows for the weeks to come and be there for each other. Cheers.
Hey, what's going on? This is Bubbles.
This is Julian.
And this is Ricky.
You're listening to Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba.